University students in South Africa clash with police over hiking their tuition fees. U.S. Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton makes her case about Benghazi. And researchers develop a formula for vaccines against all hemorrhagic viruses. Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello, I'm Lenore Moudou, and this is Africa 54. High drama on Capitol Hill as former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton testifies before the House Select Committee on Benghazi. The Congressional Committee is investigating the deadly 2012 attack on the U.S. diplomatic mission in Libya when Mrs. Clinton was the Secretary of State. Clinton is facing a long day of questioning about her role before and after the September 11th attack on the compound, which led to the death of Ambassador Christopher Stevens and 3 other Americans. Committee Chairman Trey Gowdy opened the hearing with a lengthy explanation as to the need for the panel. Questions lingered regarding the government's actions before and after the attacks in Benghazi. Her testimony comes as criticism mounts behind accusations that Republicans are using it to damage Clinton's bid for the 2016 Democratic presidential nomination.
As Secretary of State, I had the honor to lead and the responsibility to support nearly 70,000 diplomats and development experts across the globe. Losing any one of them, as we did in Iraq, Afghanistan, Mexico, Haiti, and Libya, during my tenure was deeply painful for our entire State Department and USAID family, and for me personally. America must lead in a dangerous world, and our diplomats must continue representing us in dangerous places. The State Department sends people to more than 270 posts in 170 countries around the world. Chris Stevens understood that diplomats must operate in many places where our soldiers do not, where there are no other boots on the ground, and safety is far from guaranteed.
Secretary Clinton is a polished politician who has been in this position before when she fended off Senate Republicans in 2013 hearing. For more today's proceeding, I am joined by VOA national correspondent Jim Malone. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lenore.
So Mrs. Clinton has been in this position before. So far, how is it going for her?
Well, I would say that so far we've not seen the kind of fireworks, political fireworks you might expect. Coming into the hearing, there were a lot of Democratic complaints that the Republicans are now targeting her politically through this hearing. Some of the Democrats have made that point in the hearing so far. Republicans, for their part, are pressing her about what she knew about the security situation in Benghazi prior to the attacks. Did she take enough action? Was she fully briefed? A lot of this information has been gone over before. Republicans are using newly released emails from Clinton and Ambassador Stevens to try to make more points about the security situation. But, you know, one more point here. This has all the trappings of real political theater, because here you have Mrs. Clinton, who's the leading Democratic candidate for president, a possible future president, appearing at the Congress before, in some cases, not so friendly Republican members of Congress to answer questions. So the theater here is quite important. So far, though, I would say it hasn't met the expectations of fireworks we might have had earlier.
But this is going to be a lengthy process all day long.
Right.
So are we expecting anything significant and new to come out of this?
We could, especially when we hear the chairman, Trey Gowdy, have his opportunities to question her. And here's the other thing. It's not likely that Hillary Clinton will be able to put all the questions about Benghazi or her private email accounts that have caused her so many problems behind her completely with this hearing. I think the hope is she can settle down, that there's much new information there, she can move on. And don't forget, in recent days, she's seen quite a few boosts to her own presidential hopes. Yes. A strong debate performance last week, and of course, yesterday news that Vice President Biden will not be joining the race.
Okay, well, Jim Malone, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We appreciate your insight, and our thanks to VOA national correspondent Jim Malone. Now, student protests in South Africa over tuition increases turned more violent Thursday when riot police used stun grenades to disperse demonstrators who had gathered outside Parliament. The students say the tuition increases are intended to force poor black students out of the education system. 3 top universities were shut down earlier this week due to the protests, and some remain closed. Joining us via Skype from Johannesburg, South Africa, for more on the subject is VOA's Anita Powell. Anita, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you so much, Leonard.
So, Anita, before we start our discussion, let's take a listen to what one student had to say about this.
The education problem within South Africa is a huge issue because people keep on quoting Mandela and saying that education is the right to access. Basically, it's how we become emancipated from certain things. But at the same time, education has now a monetary price, meaning to get educated, you need to be wealthy. And because of our historical legacy, it means many people are disadvantaged. Black people are disadvantaged in this nation.
And Anita is joining us via phone. Now, what is the situation currently on the ground?
Well, I have to say I commend that student for explaining it so well. Today we had a protest in central Johannesburg right outside the ruling party headquarters, about 2,000 to 3,000 students. It was quite orderly, but they were very insistent. They want the government, or rather the ruling party, to deliver on its promises of free education. They don't want tuition hikes. They're quite upset at the higher education minister, and they want things to change.
So to what extent was this increase done? How much more money are they being required to pay?
So it depends on the university. The protest started at the University of the Witwatersrand, which had asked for a 10.6% tuition and fee increase. Of course, this depends on what program you're doing. Other universities have proposed increases between 10 and 20%.
Give us a picture in terms of the extent of this protest countrywide.
Right. So we have seen protests at many different, very diverse universities, and it's caused no less than 14 universities to temporarily shut their doors. The students are all really saying the same thing. They're saying that, you know, education is not adequately supported by the government and it's getting too expensive. And they are getting louder and more insistent by the day.
Okay. Anita, thank you so much for joining us. And that was VOA's Anita Powell reporting from Johannesburg. Now to West Africa, where Ivory Coast is gearing up for a crucial presidential poll on Sunday, October 25th. Incumbent President Alassane Ouattara is favored to win a second term in office, but some opposition candidates say the conditions of the election are not free and fair. Emily Eob reports from Abidjan.
The electoral campaign is in full swing in Abidjan, Ivory Coast's biggest city. In a few days, more than 6 million voters are expected to go to the polls and vote for the next president. Incumbent President Alassane Ouattara is running for his second 5-year term and is widely seen as the frontrunner in the upcoming elections. He has the support of the PDCI, one of the country's biggest political parties, and boasts of a fast-growing economy under his presidency. Taïrou Ouattara says he supports Ouattara because of what he did for the country over the past 5 years.
He built a third bridge in Abidjan. He gave Ivory Coast drinkable water, electricity, and social security. He also made roads.
The poll is crucial for the country after post-election violence 5 years ago left at least 3,000 people dead. Supporters of Ouattara and then President Laurent Gbagbo fought each other for months when Gbagbo refused to step down after losing the 2010 vote. Gbagbo was eventually toppled, arrested, and is now awaiting trial at the International Criminal Court. Gbagbo's party, the Ivorian Popular Front, or FPI, is more divided than ever. Former Minister Pascal Affi-N'Guessan is the party's official candidate, but the ghost of Gbagbo is on everybody's lips.
What made me support him is that he said he wants to get Gbagbo, Simone Gbagbo, and Blé Goudet out of jail.
But from his cell in the ICC, Laurent Gbagbo said he was not endorsing any candidate of the upcoming elections. Other candidates include former Prime Minister Charles Konan Banny. For weeks, his coalition, the CNC, has been repeating that conditions for free and fair elections have not been met, and that the Electoral Commission is biased in favor of Ouattara. On Tuesday, he tackled the voters' list, giving some example of alleged irregularities.
Cette liste comprenait This list contains double listings. I maintain my claim. I confirm it.
Two other candidates have pulled out of the elections, also accusing the Electoral Commission of bias. The Commission has said its priority is calm elections. Emilie Yob for VOA News in Abidjan.
Now joining us by phone from Abidjan is VOA's Tatiana Moussot. Good evening, Tatiana.
Good evening.
So there have been reports of a lack of enthusiasm among voters. What can you tell us?
For those who was here in 2010, the ambience is totally different. The last campaign was more like a combat between two main parties. This year, it has been very quiet, and certainly the challenge of this vote is not the same as 5 years ago, but it's still an important vote after a decade of crisis in Ivory Coast. All the candidates are still trying to convince voters about their program. But to be honest, in Abidjan, the most impressive campaign is made by the actual president and also candidate Alassane Ouattara. He has the most colorful campaign, but the last big meeting for him should be tomorrow downtown in Abidjan. Afin Guessan for the FPI party will be in his region, and the other candidates, they are trying to do as much as they can, but it looks like it's really quiet, and people are just, I think, tired with big campaign, and they're only waiting to see on Sunday.
So why is this election significant for the country of Côte d'Ivoire at this stage?
The main reason here is that people are just really tired with crisis, and they were already saying that 5 years ago. But the question could be also, do the Ivorians are afraid of the election, and it could explain why there is not so much enthusiasm. You can still feel a kind of traumatism from the last presidential elections. Who can blame them? We can remember that 3,000 people were killed between 2010 and 2011 in the post-electoral crisis. However, we still do not know officially how many voters went to remove their voters card.
Okay, Tatiana, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. VOA's Tatiana Moussot reporting from Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. Now we turn to Sunday's election in Tanzania, and joining us by phone from Dar es Salaam is Africa 54's Vincent Makori. Good evening, Vincent.
Me
and Vincent is joining us via Skype. Now, Vincent, there have been reports that the opposition could win this election. Why is there this sentiment?
You know, the opposition is extremely optimistic, and the reason why is because mostly the young people of this country want change, and they see the change through the opposition. This is because the ruling party has been in power for many, many years. The younger generation feel that it hasn't really done the kind of things that the youth want to see happening, especially in the area of development, job creation, and even infrastructural development. So there is a lot of enthusiasm, especially among the youth, and this gives hope and that kind of propelling wind to the opposition to have the confidence that it will win.
So you mentioned change. However, the candidate of the main opposition party was a member of the ruling party until recently. So when we talk about change, what is building the enthusiasm? Because is this really change?
It is quite a paradox there, and this is what people are saying. It is not so much about the personalities. It is the parties. People feel that change is going to come through the opposition, regardless of the fact that the person who is leading the opposition right now is a person who was in the ruling party until the other day, and a person who is actually up in age, is not a young person. So the voters, and particularly the youth, are more focused on the opposition having perhaps the alternative plan than the CCM, the ruling party, because they feel that the ruling party has had enough time to prove itself. They're tired, they're fed up, and they think it is a party that has grown old and outlived its usefulness in this country.
Give us a sense quickly of preparedness. How prepared is the Electoral Commission with regards to security and other aspects? Very quickly.
You know, Yeah, the Electoral Commission feels that it's adequately prepared. It's got everything that it needs. In terms of security, the government has assured people that there will be security around the polling stations. There will be a deployment of thousands of security personnel along with the armored vehicles that will make sure that nobody will interfere with the process or will prevent other people from coming to the polling station to cast their votes. Much confidence, but apprehension from citizens, nevertheless.
Great. Vincent, thank you so much for joining us. And that was Vincent Makori reporting from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Now, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Linor Mudu. Coming up, business in Africa and social responsibility. We'll talk about it with a former African finance minister. Stay with us.
I wanted to present music and a side of American culture that is most important to me, that is a part of who I am. They're going to get some incredible performances. That's one of the things I love, bringing these artists in so you can get to see them do what they do. It's soul music, and that's what music is. It's that which comes from the soul.
The main goal for businesses is to make profits. However, many businesses operating in Africa are engaging in better serving their workforce and local communities through corporate social responsibility, CSR. Programs such as generous maternity leave for employees and building schools and hospitals are making a positive impact within companies, on communities and countries. But critics say more needs to be done in Africa in implementing corporate social responsibility. And joining us in the studio for more on the subject is Dr. Matthews Chikaunda, former Minister of Finance and Economic Planning and Development of Malawi and currently Group Chief Executive of Press Corporation Limited. Dr. Chikaunda, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
So what is your take on the issue of CSR in terms of how it's being implemented on the continent? What type of impact do you say it is having?
I think CSR in general has the connotation of handouts, companies giving handouts, and yet at the same time, they have to be responsible to the shareholders. I would like to think of CSR from a perspective of a social investment to catalyze the communities in which we do business. That has an empowering aspect to it, and that's more sustainable, where you're investing in communities to be part of your business as partners in the supply chain, value chain creation. That's where it becomes more sustainable. And right across Africa, I think companies now are looking at the sustainability of our operations. You look at poverty reduction, for example. It will only come if you involve people. No individual or country has really developed with handouts. So I think that trend now going to say, get people involved as partners in your supply chain for whatever business you're doing is much more sustainable because there's value addition, there's a win-win situation, and this is what we're really seeing right across Africa.
There are observations, critics that say CSR is still not really working. When we look at the issue in the Niger Delta, where the region is producing most of the wealth of the country, but then you see so much poverty and destruction of environment. How do we hold government responsible in terms of getting more involved in the process to ensure that companies are doing the right thing?
I think that governments really should play a facilitative role. And also, CSR that doesn't work is because it's one direction. You must always say, what is in there for the communities that I'm actually engaging in these social investments, I would like to call them that way. Because your shareholders have to be happy. The people you're engaging also have to be happy that you're making a difference. Governments have to create a playing field that facilitates this interaction between communities and big corporates, big companies, even small companies that are involved in it.
And that will include the right policies, the laws, enforcing these laws?
Absolutely. And all that space, I think where things tend to go wrong is that sometimes governments, there's a tendency for governments to want to get credit for everything that happens. And in that process, you tend to politicize these issues. And it's the politicization of issues of social engagement, social investment, that then later on ends up distorting the picture where the poverty still remains. It's more entrenched, although companies are really getting involved in corporate social responsibility programs.
How do we make communities part of this process, creating this partnership very quickly?
I think the communities have to actually, you have to show communities that there is something in there for them. And what they should be able to see is empowerment. Ability for them to get involved in the value addition, for them to be part of the equation, to own up to these programs also in part, not this idea of a company throwing monies at communities. You can never solve problems by throwing monies at communities or any problem at all. Get the people involved around the issue so that they take ownership also of the programs that you're implementing in the various communities. Okay. And also your company then is benefiting from the involvement of these communities.
Mr. Chikaunda, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
It was great to have you in our studios.
Thank you very much.
That's Dr. Matthews Chikaunda. He is former Minister of Finance and Economic Planning and Development of Malawi and Group Chief Executive of Press Corporation Limited. Now, after 2 straight weeks when no new cases of Ebola were reported in West Africa, the World Health Organization has reported that 2 new cases have been recorded in Guinea. Meanwhile, work continues on developing vaccines to prevent new outbreaks of Ebola and similar viruses. VOA's Carol Pearson reports.
The Ebola outbreak in West Africa is not over yet, nor have we heard the last of the deadly virus.
We are going to have other Ebola outbreaks. History tells us that Ebola just doesn't disappear and go away.
There have been more than 24 outbreaks of Ebola in the past 4 decades, but until this year, there wasn't a vaccine against it. The new vaccine combines a weakened cold sore virus with a piece of the Zaire strain of Ebola that devastated West Africa. The result is an immune response against Ebola Zaire, but not against 3 other strains of Ebola.
The available evidence suggests that a vaccine against one strain will not protect against viruses of a different strain.
But the vaccine formula using the cold sore virus, VSV, seems to provide broader protection in animal studies.
The VSV approach that was used for the Zaire Ebola strain that was tested in this study has been successfully and very effectively applied to all of the other known strains of Ebola.
Well before Ebola Zaire began sweeping through West Africa a year and a half ago, scientists were working on vaccines for Ebola and 2 other deadly hemorrhagic viruses, Marburg and Lassa.
Our original purpose before the outbreak of Ebola in West Africa was to do just that, to have VSV as a vector and to have Marburg, Lassa, and Ebola in there. That was the original plan.
Lassa virus is not as deadly as Ebola or Marburg, but up to 500,000 West Africans get Lassa fever every year, and about 5,000 die from it.
Lassa, from a prevalence standpoint, is clearly much more of an issue than Ebola is.
So will that research go forward?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. The goal is to protect against all hemorrhagic viruses that strike people in West Africa. Carol Pearson, VOA News, Washington.
It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. A popular comic is returning to host the Oscars. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In the Republic of Congo, police fire warning shots and tear gas amid protests against a possible referendum to raise presidential age and term limits. In South Sudan, Ugandan flags are taken down as soldiers continue to withdraw from the country. In South Africa, security forces fired stun grenades at student protesters as they stormed parliament during a reading of the interim budget. In Tanzania, supporters rally for President candidate John Pombe Magufuli ahead of Sunday's elections. Finally, in Kenya, Lake Nakuru is under considerable threat from recent deforestation and nearby urban development. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
And welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Esther Gidu-Yuwat. Here's what's trending. It's Chris Rock's time to shine. The beloved comic announced on Twitter on Wednesday that he will be back to host the Oscars in 2016 for a second time. Rock hosted the 77th Oscar Awards in 2005 and didn't change his confrontational comedic style for the show, poking fun at fellow celebrities. While Rock was praised by some critics for being himself, he was also chastised by those who simply couldn't take the jokes. Next up, a judge has dismissed a copyright infringement case against rapper Jay-Z over his 1999 hit Big Pimpin' before the case was sent to a jury. The judge ruled that the heir of an Egyptian composer did not have the right to pursue a copyright infringement, and the case should be tossed out. The abrupt end to the case came after the rapper and music producer Timbaland testified about creating the rap hit and their belief that they had valid rights to use the Egyptian song. And finally, as Hindus across India indulged in Navaratri celebrations, devotees in western Gujarat state got tattoos of various gods and goddesses made on their bodies to mark the Hindu festival. In many parts of the country, the festival is marked by celebrations involving prayer, music, and dance among men and women. Many young attendees were seen getting tattoos of Mother Goddess, Durga, and Lord Rama. Tattoo artists are ecstatic about the new trend. These tattoos are both permanent and temporary. And that's what's trending today. Lenore, back to you.
Thank you, Esther. People are getting more and more creative with tattoos. What interesting art there. Well, that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 300 and 600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and good night from Washington.
A lot of expressions in English have to do with parts of the body.
Mouth off.
Does this involve taking one's mouth off?
Jonathan, did you hear that kid mouthing off in the grocery store to his mom?
Yeah, he was being so disrespectful. I would never talk to one of my parents like that.
I know someone who won't be watching cartoons before bed tonight.
To mouth off means to speak in a rude or angry way to someone in authority, such as a parent or a boss. Children who mouth off to their parents may end up being punished. The term can also mean to complain about something without thinking about whether your words may offend someone around you. Mouthing off is usually not a good idea. And that's English in a minute.